Okay. Let's wait for the people to come now. All right, there we go. There we are. Yay! Can you hear me now? Sweet. There we are. Cool. Okay. Awesome. I am back. All right. If you stream it, they will come. I know there's a bunch of people here earlier, Matt. It's Anyway, all right. So since you guys couldn't hear my spiel before, I will give it again here. So this is all Matt's fault, really, when it comes right down to it. So he had bought an hour of time from me before G&E, and he asked me last night to go ahead and live stream me writing a poem, because I've been getting into this whole warrior bard type thing, and so he asked me to go ahead and take an hour worth of time and record me writing him a poem. So I said, well, sure, I'll go ahead and live stream it, and then realized that live streaming somebody drinking beer and using a Google Doc isn't very exciting. So I decided, okay, well, what can we go ahead and do? And so I decided instead to go ahead and touch on something that Cristiano was always has been tapping me to go ahead and do a lot of scroll text and everything like that, and because apparently the scroll texting or the wordsmithing part of scrolls is a little mysterious. So I thought that I would spend a little bit of time today and kind of get into how do I approach writing a piece for somebody else, right? So not just writing a piece for my own for my own interest or for my own thing, but writing a piece that's actually designed to be for somebody else. What's kind of the process, because I don't just sit down and write it. There is a little bit of research and a little bit of there is actually conscious, specific, non-artistic thought that goes into it. So I figured I would touch base on that a little bit, kind of give a little primer on what are the kind of things that that I think about when I'm approaching writing a text like that. So in the SCA, both of those things for me really boil down to the nature of persona, right? Is that what is the sort of what is the what's the audience of the poem that we're writing, or the text that we're writing, or whatever, right? And the other thing that I use a lot as kind of my source material is actually a person's heraldry, for no other reason than because if I am writing a text that is supposed to be specific to their wants and the desires and something, if I'm writing something stylized for them, then I want to look and see kind of what have they invested their creative energies into creating, so that I design a piece that kind of syncs with that. One example that kind of comes to mind, and this was something from a year and a half ago or so, was a piece that I wrote for Paranel de Croix for the East Kingdom Artisan Exchange, and the whole theme of it was heraldry, which made it super easy to go ahead and I just put my contacts in, Ian. So it's Graydon. So I had my eyes. Yeah, exactly. This is my normal state. Yeah. Anyway, so the theme being heraldry, I wanted to go ahead and design a piece that specifically answered her poetry, her heraldry rather. And so her heraldry, it's blue and white with 3 gold stars in the chief, and then two ravens facing each other in the base of it. And so I wrote this entire backstory of of something that her persona would have done. Taking a boat voyage to I think she's going off to get married or something like that, and that there were these 3 crosses of gold that were gifted to her from various people in her life, and kind of the story surrounding those 3 crosses. And so, so heraldry is one of those things that it serves kind of that real social need in the essay sometimes, where it gives you kind of that visual clue of who the heck it is that you're talking to, but with a little bit of creativity and a little bit of I don't know, with a little bit of thought. There are things that you can weave from that and kind of go into general persona. So that's kind of how I was going to start tonight, is kind of dive into that a little bit and just kind of walk through my process. I will be honest, I am a little nervous because I don't think I have ever had anybody watch me write poetry before. This is a little strange. So and there are like 30 of you, so this is going to be really weird. But hey, such is life, right? We got to step out of our comfort zone if we're going to do anything, right? Okay. So again, if you've got the Google Doc up, you're going to see me kind of dealing or throwing text in there and throwing some thoughts down on there, just so I can keep them organized. I remember this was a joke that I'd made on the East Kingdom Scribes board a couple of months ago, that somebody asked what my preferred tools were, to go ahead and whenever I'm designing period pieces or anything like that, they were talking specifically about pens and ink and everything like that, and my running joke was that my preferred tool is Google Docs, because really I get into the calligraphy a little bit, but I don't really no, that's not it's water. Thank you. It's the beer comes later, if I can keep from spilling myself all over it. So anyway, right. So the first poem, and if you guys are chatting over there, I'm actually not going to be able to see you because I have the Google Doc in a different tab from Facebook. So that doesn't. Am I breaking? I'm not breaking. No, I'm not breaking. I did spill water all over myself, so that was exciting. But that's okay. So where to start? So I'm just going to write down or kind of talk through skills of my persona, since the poem is going to be specifically about sort of where's my character going. So my character is 14th century, right after the Scottish War for Independence in 1306. And he is a sort of he's Scot-Norman, which was actually a fairly traditional combination. Robert the Bruce, in fact, was half Scottish and half Norman. His mother was Norman, so so that's a fairly common common combination there. The whole concept of why did somebody in my kind of position get into not only fighting but also into more artistry, and specifically music and spoken word, was that he was continentally educated. He wasn't sitting back in the heath of Scotland, even as the gentry and the aristocracy of Scotland was beginning to rise in the 14th century. But he was actually sent off to the continent to any one of 150 existing universities in England at that time. And I've never really fleshed it out more than that, other than to go ahead and say that that's sort of where he learned to do all these things. But now that I'm an established lord and everything like that, I've now returned home, to go ahead and see, kind of what can he bring from what he learned on the island. So that's why if his fighting kit is distinctly Norman, even though for the most part the persona is largely Scottish in his normal dress, and obviously his name is Scottish and everything like that. But his fighting kit is distinctly Norman. That nice tall conical Norman helmet, and even the new one, the Cervelier with the nice broad nasal and or the Patrache. It's all very Norman in style. So as opposed to some of the earlier period Scottish kits. So And so that's really the extent of where my persona goes. Is early 14th century Scott Norman. And you guys all know my heraldry. If I'd thought about it, I would have brought a copy of my heraldry up here, but I didn't. But it's the red background, 2 golden apples. It has an Erde field division and a clenched gauntlet down below. I've been playing with motto a little bit, and if nothing else, as sort of a focus for my fighting. And the motto that I've come up with translates to yearn for patience, and so it's the kind of that joint statement of both working for something and desiring something and seeking something, but ultimately the thing that you need to be seeking is to be patient, and to understand what is going on around you, more than to want your desire for that thing to kind of overtake your actions. So I'm going to throw that down here as just kind of more subject matter, and then again the heraldry, 2 golden apples, an Erde field division, and a clench gauntlet. Okay. Oh, I'll even spell gauntlet right. Okay, so the other thing that I try to do whenever I'm crafting a piece for this is to kind of look up and figure out who are poets that the persona would have known, or what are styles that would have been appropriate at the time that the persona was living. One text that I worked on was for a late period Dutch fencer, and the text that I wound up settling on, it was another poem, but I was looking through like 15th century Dutch poets, who were common in the period and were well known, and came across the works of Bretano, and so styled a poem based on Bretano's poetry. And Bretano's poetry was two rhyming couplets, and then a triplet, where it's got an ABA rhyme scheme. So the rhyme scheme was basically AABB ABA, and then so that's the shape that the poem took. So just to kind of to illustrate here, and again, I'm going to go ahead and start the timer now because Matt gave me an hour to go ahead and write this from soup to nuts. So I'm going to start the timer now, so I know exactly when my hour is up, so I can go ahead and make the challenge here. So 61 hour. All right, starting now. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to do a very highly technical Google search. 14th century. We'll go Norman poets. I'm making sure to type extra loud so that comes over the over the microphone here. So, all right. So there's a bunch of stuff, and again, when we're looking at the just normal Google searches, right? I'm just going to grab a screenshot of it here, and I'll throw this on the Google Drive here. So I cut through the first couple of web entries in there, basically skipping over all the Wikipedia entries that are going to be up at the top there. Wikipedia as a research tool, especially for something like this, is remarkably handy, but it always has that research caveat that treat Wikipedia the same way that you would treat Cribs notes, right? Don't treat it as the ultimate source, but if you're going to use it as the way to get to the ultimate source, because the great thing about Wikipedia for the most part is that all of their stuff is sourced. Use it as kind of the summary, but make sure you're diving into the additional sources to find out kind of the specifics or the nuance that may have been weeded out when any particular source was distilled down to Wikipedia, or even if you're using there's a I think it's simple.wikipedia.com that takes what is your normal Wikipedia entry and makes it even simpler. So that's kind of a that's even more so. So you want to make sure you're following it back, figure out what the original source is. So just kind of looking through here. So the Norton anthologies, those are obviously really well known. Norton puts out a series of anthologies on every artistic subject. I remember when I was in school, the big history texts all had accompanying Norton anthologies of music that were, sets of, 45 CDs, with, 1,000 pieces of music on them or whatever, and it was basically anything that you would use throughout your entirety of music history. So, let's see. I am actually going to skip over all of that. I'm going to go to the Harvard link here. So this is English language in the 14th century. Just kind of see. Yeah, it's dealing with Chaucer. Let's see. Let's see here. So this is Chaucer and Robert Manning. So the problem with 14th century English poetry is that in the 14th century, English is still largely a language in flux, right? It is, kind of emerging from Middle English to become more modern English over the next century and a half, really. Let's see. Yeah, and actually, this website even pays homage to that. That it was really by the 15th century, London English was firmly established as a dialect spoken by people of power. But yeah. All right, so that's actually not that interesting in terms of what it is that I'm looking for. So again, what I'm looking for here is kind of source material. Who is someone that I could emulate, or something that I could, could look at. So Harvard didn't work out. Let's go to the Yale link. That's the Beinecke Digital Collection. There's a whole thing on Anglo-Norman poetry, and that's actually just the book. But let's see who it gives us here. Let's see. This is all biblical poetry and a little bit of French verse, which is going to be the other problem, obviously, with Norman poetry, is that it was all if it wasn't in Latin, it was in French. But again, we're not looking necessarily for the languages themselves. What we're looking for are stylistic characteristics. So let's see. Okay, how about okay, here's one. Let's look up Guillaume Leclerc. Nothing else reminds me of used to a friend of mine. Her last name was Leclerc, so let's see. All right, William the Clerk of Normandy. So here, I'll take another screenshot here. So you guys can see my my fascinating search results as we're going through here. All right. So let's see. He wrote a bestiary. So that's interesting. He wrote a bestiary, so that's always fun. He's not the same person. Let's see. William the Clerk of Normandy was a Norman cleric and Old French poet. He's not the same person as the Scoto-Norman poet William the Clerk, who wrote the Roman de Fergus, sometimes wrongly attributed to the. All right. So this is it. So Scoto-Norman poem William the Clerk, who wrote Roman de Fergus. Sounds like Thurian, I bet you. Yep, Arthurian. Okay. All right. All right. See, so now we're on to something here. So now we're getting into some stylistic stuff. written by Scottish Norman poets. So let's see. So I bet you that let's see, written in Old French, probably at the beginning of the 13th century. Okay, cool. So yeah, so we're talking the right time period. It's a little bit early, but that's okay because again, we're talking, what are some approximations that we can make to get some stylistic characteristics of works that may have been known. So let's dive in here. So I'm gonna go to the Wikipedia article this time on Roman de Fergus because I'm assuming that it's going to be able to click me. Either it's going to give me excerpts of it, or it's going to be able to give me. Here we go. External links. Oh, interesting. So, middle 13th century, the Roman was translated and adapted into Middle Dutch, but it's not giving me a text of it. So let's see. Story begins with a stag hunt. See, and actually, so this is definitely this is going to work because I know, knowing me as well as I do, I've got a thing for stags. So, this is from the Wikipedia article. Throw this in the thing. It's a little teeny tiny, but that's okay. Yeah. So let's see. Yep, Arthur's chasing a great white stag. Percival captures it. Fergus persuades his father to give him a suit of armor. Right. Okay, so yeah. So guy sees Arthur, wants to become a knight, and that goes about as well as you would expect. So, all right. All right. So I found my source material. Now what I need to do is I need to find a text of it. So let's see if I can dig this up here. I'm just going to go ahead and change my Google search. Roman de Fergus text English. Well, it was written in French actually. So let's see if I can find the French text. Because the next thing I want to know is I want to get characteristics on the piece itself, and really basically just look and see what its rhyme scheme is, and see if I can find any poetic, kind of hallmarks of the piece. So, all right. So that is again. Just kind of a write-up of it. Okay. Okay, so again, just finding some more interesting details on the poem here. The Roman de Fergus is it's a set piece or poetic illusion. So that's one thing that's really common in medieval poetry, and I'm not going to get into the huge treatise of what characteristics are common of medieval poetry, because they're pretty easy to find in terms of just doing like regular web research if you want to get into sort of a more academic approach to what medieval poetry was like. But anybody that's seen any of my poetry, I use a lot of allusion in my poems, a lot of allusion. And that's because particularly biblical allusion was really, really common in medieval literature as a whole, but particularly in poetry. And that biblical allusion carried a bunch of different forms, not just kind of direct reference to, someone's piety or someone's grace or kind of directly, painting somebody as biblically sound, I guess, for lack of a better term, but also just their reliance on trios, on the power of the number three, and things like that. So there are, there was another poem that I wrote not that long ago that was, it was a direct allusion to the Garden of Eden, and it was a reference to the Garden of Eden kind of after time had passed, after they'd been living in the Garden of Eden for a while, and kind of how things had changed and how things had progressed, and sort of what that meant to the inhabitants there, stuff like that. All very, very, very common in medieval poetry as a whole. So the fact that this particular poem is directly allegorical is interesting, or at least in terms of our little experiment here today. Yeah, it's kind of a combination. The term used is mise en scène, and mise en scène is kind of the combination of visual theme and storytelling. So it's storytelling through the visual scene. It's I'm trying to even think of a better example here. I mean, you see it a lot in film. Because it's the direct imagery that's telling the story, and in poetry and in literature it more comes when you're dealing with like sublime aspects of detailing kind of the scenarios that you're dealing with, that the scenarios themselves become part of the story. So all right, but again, none of this has gotten me really any closer to finding the text that I want to find. So let's see. It's entirely possible. I mean, I would doubt it, but it's entirely possible that the text actually isn't available online. That'd be really strange. So if we can't find the actual text, the finished text includes. Here we go. No, that's not it. This might be it. But if the other thing that we can do if we can't find the actual text would be to see if we can find someone who has already written on an analysis of the poem, right? With a poem that is 800 or 700 years old, chances are pretty likely that we'll be able to find someone that has written on it. Okay, so let's see here. I went to the one. Let's see. It's like I said, it's been translated into Dutch. So, let me take a screenshot and throw it up on the Google Doc here. Right. So, yeah. Okay. So the Romance of Fergus, as spoken. Right. Okay. And then it was translated in the mid 15th century. So, unless this is really old, no, that's got to be the Dutch. Okay. So. Again, what we want to find here, let's backtrack a little bit through our search here and see. Text is available. Yeah, see, it says that. Text is available. Right. First part of the roman was translated from French fairly accurately, but the second part, possibly the work of another author, was more loosely derived. Okay, so yeah, that's not going to give us enough information to go ahead. All right. So when in doubt, I'm just going to go ahead and see what I can find on a web search for Roman de Fergus rhyme scheme. See what it tells me. The actual text of the poem would have been good, but what are you going to do? It's meter and rhyme scheme. There you go. I bet you this is going to give me the text actually too. Okay, come on. So this is kind of a neat page. The page is called Revolvy, Revolvy. And what is kind of neat about it is that it's sort of looks like they're all they might all be Wikipedia links, or at least Wikipedia-like links. The page is not particularly fast either, but that's a but basically it looks like it's basically an aggregator. So it's pulling not the article up on Roman de Fergus, but it's also pulling up an article on the author, an article on the topic. So who was Fergus? At least in this way. In allusion, the kind of the English title of the poem was Fergus of Galloway. It was written by William the Clerk, the Scoto-Norman author. So, all right, what we want to find here is there's something on the rhyme scheme. Clan Ferguson. So you can go pretty far. Revolving kind of lets you go a little far afield. I mean, it's got kind of a broad swath of. I mean, I've got articles here on ancient Roman units of measurement. So the question is why is it's maybe a little bit broad, but it's a neat tool to kind of, again, if you're doing wide searches, it might be handy. So. Okay. All right, how much time have I got left here? I'm guessing probably about 40 more minutes. Yeah, okay, 40 more minutes. Plenty of time. Brilliant. Okay, here we go. So the Roman de Fergus is a typical chivalric Arthurian romance, which means that the rhyme scheme is going to be super simple. It's all just couplets, and it looks like it is in. Oh, cool. Okay, yeah. So it's basically in full chivalric romance style. So it is a set of 12 lines of rhyming couplets, so 6 rhymes, and then another set of 6 rhymes, and the last two lines rhyme with the first 2 rhymes. So it's got that whole sense of scope, right? Is that it begins where it ends. The sense of completion, which again, that's another sort of big aspect of medieval literature in particular, is that the Wheel of Time. Like if any of you are familiar with the Carmina Burana, which was a big piece of music written by Karl Orff, but it was all based on poetry by the Galliards. It's the set of 25 poems, and the first movement and the last movement are the same, but even within that, there are mini circles. So there are 3 mini circles within the big circle on the outside, and the whole sense of the piece is about how the Wheel of Time grinds on, and that you really can't escape the Wheel of Time, and that all these little things happen within the Wheel of Time, but there's still kind of the big overarching, plot to life, I guess is kind of the best way to describe it here. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab this. again, just kind of use this as a reference here. Okay. All right. So now I have my material. I know what my exemplar piece is going to be. So similar to anybody else that's designing a scroll, that's looking through source material to go ahead and decide what's their scroll going to look like. I've done the same thing here, basically. Is I've gone and I've looked for my poetic exemplar to go ahead and figure out what is the piece that I'm going to be emulating throughout this process. And I can tell you that this wasn't planned, because if I were planning this in advance, I certainly wouldn't have settled on a 24-line chivalric romance poem, because that's a lot of text to go ahead and whip out in 40 hours, in 40 minutes rather. But hey, we'll see how far we can get through here. So, but again, so I found my exemplar, and I have my source material. I know who it is that I'm going to be, writing about, and I know sort of now what's the shape that piece is going to take. So let's get started here. So what are sort of the themes that I want to touch on in this poem? So I know that my target is a fighter, right? He considers himself a finesse fighter, not he's not gonna bowl anybody over. Because I hear rumor that he's a little guy, short guy. Just a rumor. It's probably not true. Rakishly handsome, but I'm not sure that we necessarily want to go ahead and include that in here. But that he is also artistic. Appreciates the finer thing in life. Good beer, wine, good friends. And that's a line that could probably make it right into the poem itself. Let's see. He he is well read and well educated. Well traveled. He's a storyteller. And specifically, when Alexander there asked me, when I asked him what the subject is, let's see, the specific words that he used, I believe, was his thoughts on being a made man in the 14th century. So he had taken up his arms for his country. He had been well educated by a family who supported him abroad. He had returned home. He had inherited title, so he was in for medieval Scotland in the early 1300s. He was in a pretty good place. So let's see. I'm not sure that I want to include this detail in the actual work itself, but he has one son. Yeah, just leave it at that. Okay, so now, here we go. And I just want to keep a reference to, all right. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, okay, 24. Okay. All right. Here comes the part that's going to be super exciting. And what I find is that whenever I'm writing poetry like this, starting is always the hard part, right? It's always kind of coming up with that initial rhyme. And really, given the rhyme scheme for this particular one, knowing that for the first two lines and the last two lines are going to rhyme, and that the whole point of this is to go ahead and design sort of a circular piece in that manner, I'm going to want to figure out what those are right up front, right? The rest of it is all detail and fluff, and it's all the storytelling that we can elaborate on. But getting it right when you start and getting it right at the end, I'm going to let you in on a dirty little secret. That's what everyone's going to remember. Like if rhyme H isn't great, no one's going to know, right? Because what's important is that the rhymes at the beginning and the end of your big circles, and the rhymes at the beginning and the end of your little circles, those are really the ones that you're going to want to go ahead and focus on, and sort of see, make sure that those are where your big applause lines are, right? So, all right. So let's see, how can we start here? Okay, so for any of you guys that are following along on the Google Doc right now, and if you're not following along on the Google Doc, this is really going to be the part that I'm going to strongly suggest that you do, just so you can see what's going on as I'm typing here. So I've kind of come up with my first line and a half of this poem, and the opening line is from Scottish Lord and Norman Bride, which it's got the right flow that I want. It's got the right kind of combination of soft syllables and hard syllables. Scottish, nice hard syllables. Norman, a nice fluid syllable. So it's and you've got Scottish Lord. So Lord is softer than Bride, which has that kind of hard BR sound to it. So being the first line of the poem and knowing that my first two lines and my last two lines are going to rhyme, now I've got to go ahead and see if I can make Bride, or that IDE sound, work in terms of, can I make that work for my rhyme scheme? Can I come up with a winning couplet at the beginning and a winning couplet specifically for the end that have that syllable at the end? So I am going to be, again, the first one to go ahead and admit I cheat. When I'm really working on rhymes and everything like that, what I need is just as many words as possible thrown at me so that I can go ahead and start picking out words that are going to work in the scheme, and words that are going to help me move forward this narrative. What are words that kind of fit within my narrative? Because the rhyme scheme is a mechanic more than anything else. That's really all that it is. So I want to make sure that I've got words that fit the narrative, and then just happen to fit the rhyme scheme. So there are a million websites that will scour dictionaries for rhyming words for you. You don't need to use the one that I use, but there are a million of them. So, there it is. I will also totally admit that I not only use websites that will give me rhyming words for the things that I'm trying to go ahead and say, but I do also absolutely keep a thesaurus with me all the time, so that I know that if particularly when I'm starting a particular rhyme, if I have overused a word, or if I have come to a point that I know kind of the sentiment that I want to go ahead and say, but I'm not sure the word that I want to use, a thesaurus is my best friend, and it is absolutely critical, especially in poetry. You can play a lot with word order in poetry. You can do verb inversions and stuff like that, but ultimately the words that end your lines have got to be the right ones. Like that's really, even in your lesser rhymes, you've got to make sure that you have rhymes and that the words are right. So starting first though with the rhymes, in fact, I'm thinking here. Let's see. Okay, so those are my first two, and then my last two, probably something with pride, because that's a very it's a very Scottish attitude to be proud of where one came from and the work that one has done. And to go ahead and counter that, countryside. So I'm thinking that's something with the countryside to go ahead and end it also. But maybe countryside isn't the right word. I might instead want countrywide is a good one, although I'm not crazy about that word. Isn't particularly lyrical. Riverside would be nice. Mountainside might be nice. Countrywide is a perfectly nice word, but it's just not something about countryside that really kind of has that nice flow to it. But in the meantime, I still need to go ahead and finish my first rhyme. So from Scottish lord and Norman bride came forth a son. Oh man, that's too bad. I wonder if I could fit in blue-eyed somehow. So okay, yep. So now we just need to forth the sun with bright blue eyes. There we go. Okay. So from Scottish lord and Norman bride came forth a son with bright blue eyes, and so now that's my opening couplet. From there out, the rest of it's going to be gravy. So let's go ahead and find out what's going to be what's going to be the end of the story here. So the end of the story is going to be that he has returned home after his travails. He has come home because he has inherited title, and so it's time for him to get to the work of running the land that he has been gifted. So we can fill in the details now, but depending on how far we make it through the narrative, because again, 12 lines sounds like a lot, but it's actually not, especially when you're dealing with rhyme couplets, because a lot of times it's going to be one sentence worth of material spread across two different lines. So there's not actually going to be that much material in here. Returned he then to home and countryside. Again, I'm not crazy about that word, to home, and so I'm going to highlight that. Because I'm just not crazy about that word. That's just not. It's not fabulous. To tend his. No, he's not gonna. He doesn't. They're not shepherds. To, you know what? It doesn't matter. Well, to blah 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 with pride, right? Right. So we know kind of where we're going, and we don't know what he's going to do when he gets there just yet. But again, the details are unimportant here. Okay, so back to the beginning now. Now we're going to go ahead and start filling in these details. So we know that we've got 5 more couplets that we need to go ahead and fit into kind of this first stanza, and I should be at a half an hour? Oh, 25 minutes. Okay, perfect. So let's see. The first thing, let's see. Well, we know that he has learned swordcraft and that he's educated. So let's see. Sword and shield. One of the other things that I really love doing is, see, this is perfect, is dealing with archaic words, right? And so, especially if you're dealing with, medieval poetry, like archaic words are totally in place. So we know that and this is actually even it's an English word. It's a Welsh word, but veiled, which is kind of a open foresty area, right? So what is the exact? It's an area of open or forested country. So so sword and book with pen and shield. He. So this is going to be one of those things where thesaurus is going to come in, right? Is because I know that what I want to say is that he was able to. So he's learned and he's a soldier, and that he has demonstrated his ability to wield both with equal measure, right? But I don't want to use the word wield in the same line where I use the word wield. Like that's getting silly. So the question is, do I want to end? Can I figure out a way to end the line with the word wield as in holding, as opposed to using the word wield as in forced? So let's see. Sword and book with pen and shield. The problem with wield is that it really needs an objectifier afterwards, and so the question is now: do I want to go ahead and let's see if I can make it work. Basically, roll over the sentence to the next line. We're sword and book with pen and shield, soldiers and scholars taught him to wield. It's like not on Remo, editing is for December, so we're not going to worry about that right now. Scholars taught him to wield both his mind and form in equal measure. And I feel like the rhythm's getting away. From Scottish lord and Norman bride came forth a son with bright blue eyes, with sword and book, with pen and shield, soldiers and scholars, him to wield. No, that doesn't work. Learned men taught him to wield, and cut out the word both. So from Scottish lord and Norman bride came forth a son with bright blue eyes, with sword and book, with pen and shield. Learned men taught him to wield his mind and form in equal measure. To seek. What would he be seeking that rhymes with measure? What would he be seeking? Well, there's pleasure for sure, but the Lord that we're talking about here is certainly upstanding and biblically right. So he wouldn't be seeking pleasure in the fields of Scotland where he would eventually come to become the Lord. Totally unlike me. His mind and form in equal measure to work and not. So I don't want to say squander leisure, to work and not. So go to my thesaurus here. I want an antonym for squander. All right, squander. Antonyms. Okay, to gather leisure, to accumulate, to collect. That's my words. His mind and form in equal measure to work and not. To work and not. And that's all that this is giving me for rhyming words. Okay, so maybe measure's not the right words. Too much. So let's go. Let's. Okay, yep, here we go. Let's see. His mind and form in equal part. Part's a good one. His mind and form in equal parts. To work and not. To work and not. To work and not. No, okay, I don't think part's the right word either. His mind and form in equal breadth. Let's try that. To work and not. All right, so we can get a little, because really, so let's try this here. So, just mind and form in equal breadth to live his life. No, to okay, so how about if his mind and form in equal breadth? His mind in equal breadth. In equal breadth. In equal. In equal. In equal. Okay, so in equal scope, mind and breadth in equal scope to work. Oh, I like this. To equal scope. Boy, this one's really giving me a hard time. So the whole sentiment there is that he's being taught to be both physical and mental, and to be analytical, and everything like that, and I'll figure out something that goes there rather than get hung up on it. So the whole scope. So Nicol scope. Okay, so I'm kind of at my first sort of mini cycle here, because again, it's going to be two 12-line stanzas. So the halfway through, if there's any action or any plot, right? So far, all he's done is learn to fight and be smart. So next should be where his journey begins. So. His beloved home. Sent off from his beloved home to see the world. Read the tomes and study tomes and learn from those. Learn to learn there's great and I don't like the word old, great and aged, to learn from great and aged men. Great and aged men. So here we can allude to the fact that he's going to be coming home before he travels home again. Okay, so where am I now? Okay, so I am at my last couplet for the first stanza before he travels home again. For in their for in their wisdom, sovereign Lord and sovereign lady. Nope. With love for their okay, so I know also with love for their so now I know I'm a syllable short here, so I want to find a word means love but has two syllables instead of one, with fondness, with yearning, with respect. No. With there we go. It's not even so much that I need an extra syllable. It's more just like with love for. That 3-word phrase really doesn't work. So cherishing their only son and heir. And like, so this last line here, I've got to really, this has really got to kind of seal out this stanza. Can't really. I can't kind of because like earlier in the, I could kind of like take a line and have it continue on to the next line and still be able to hit my rhyme target. But this one. Son and heir for a newborn land need for newborn land wished him prepared. I'm not crazy about that line, but it's kind of it is what it is, right? Like that's So from Scottish lord and Norman bride came forth a son with bright blue eyes, with sword and book, with pen and shield. Learned men taught him to wield his mind and form in equal scope, to work something that rhymes with scope. Sent off from his beloved home to see the world and study tomes, to learn from great and aged men before he travels home again, cherishing their only son and heir for newborn land which him prepared. So it's kind of the whole scope is that he's being sent off because we're just after the War of Independence, or the Scottish Civil War, rather, their first really attempt to go ahead and break from the crown. And so now this new country is going to need learned, educated, scholarly men to go ahead and lead them, right? So, it's got the whole nature of travel, it's got the journey attached to it, everything like that. So, I mean, it chicks a lot of medieval literature tropes here. So we're just going to keep on going here. So what could he have done? Okay. All right, so I'm gonna nope, not the from the Dutch, from the Germans, from the French, from the Spanish, from not Italians because Italy wasn't a thing, but you don't want to go either Venice or Verona or something like that. So I conveniently have 5 places that he could go and learn different things about how to be a worldly man of the 14th century. And I happen to need 5 couplets to go ahead and set out, this next stanza. So, and this is kind of where if you ever question any of the historic details, like for example, like I know that the Dutch were a thing in the medieval period, but was their country known as Holland? And that's the question, right? And so the name Holland first appeared in sources for the region around Haarlem, and by 1064 was being used for the entire country. So the answer to that question is yes. In Holland, and let's see. Holland Masters of the Sword. Holland Masters of Holland he found. Okay, I don't like the word master. So, I want the noun version, not the adjective version. Noun. Expert. That's, yeah, I want expert. Okay, so we can do this. So we can. He learned in Holland. And he learned in Holland from Masters of Sword. He learned in Holland from Masters of Sword. And word that rhymes with sword. All right, so I've missed my hour, but that's okay because I've been talking a lot. So technically, my hour is over. You know. Okay, and so this is okay. One of my handy dandy research links is that I have an entire folder of links that are dedicated to fencing terms. You know, because you do. Pronation. That's knuckles up and palm down. Significance, cutting swords, flat pair, right. Okay. So, okay. Right. He learned in Holland from Masters of Sword to parry, clean, and press toward. I'm not crazy about that. Cool thing here is that since basically I'm just designing individual couplets, I'll be able to put them in whatever order I want when I'm done. And now here's the other fun part about this particular rhyme scheme is that if we're being totally honest with it, the only couplets that rhyme are going to be the first one and the last one. None of the rest of these should have any rhyme to anything else other than their following line. So I'm not. I've been kind of aware of that as I've been going through here. So I'm not sure if this is going to become a problem or not, but we'll see. Okay. Okay. Now again, I don't think that Germany was united by this time. I think it was independent states, kind of like Italy is. I don't care about the Federal Republic of Germany. History. That's Napoleon. Crowned Emperor, Carolingia. Okay, 12th century. Hausstaffen. Okay, here we go. Population declined the first half of the 14th century, starting with the Great Famine. Right. Absorbed northern Italy, and so it's basically the Holy Roman Empire at this point. So instead of Germany, let's pick a city-state. Let's go to Burgundy. This gives us some, and Burgundians were fashion. They were highly fashionable. So lots of wine, lots of, Burgundy. Human to love. Learned to love the something finery. Finery. He time spent in okay. Illuminated. What was I looking at here? Related. Okay, so I know my list is going to be related, and I want gears. Run a house. Gears. How? No, that's not going to be the right word. So related is not going to be right. So equated. So he stated, summated, prorated, predated, postdated, misstated, derated, conflated, related, backdated, straighted, baited, skated, rated, gated, hated, graded, baited. Serrated, graded, fixated, dominated. Cards, friends. Name. Okay, so we can do that. Spanish vineyards quenched its palate. That's okay. If you don't spell words right, sometimes it's hard to find rhymes. There you go. Palate, salad, shallot. Okay. So the word meal recipes. Shout. Cool. There we go. There we go. He nine feasts of beef and shallot. And what they have learned in Italy that he didn't learn anywhere else. Let's see. Let's see. What does Verona do? Let's see. In the 1300s. Oh, cool. There we go. So Verona was the center of the arts. Perfect. Words. Mouths of Verona. Boy, that's a lot of not words that I'm going to be able to use. Persona. Words spoken from Verona's. Yes, that's. From words heard spoken from Verona's lips. Okay. How about showmanship? Taught him skill. Showmanship. Okay. So let's see. He learned in Holland from masters of sword, parry clean and press toward. He learned the love of. Learned to love the. Learned. Did I use the word breadth? I never actually used the word breadth, did I? No, I didn't. Cool. Okay, so breadth of worldly finery. Time. All the time he spent in Burgundy, implying he lingered there for a while. The time he spent at courts in France taught him the social game advance. The Spanish vineyards quenched his palate as he dined on feasts of beef and shallot. His words heard spoken from Verona's lips taught him the skill of showmanship. I think that that's all good. We can just do that. And so now, okay. Now, do I want to keep the word pride as my last word? Let's see. What are my options here? Beside, deride, confide, decide, denied, implied. Returned he then to home and countryside. Gentleman. Gentleman learned. Which word was I going to use? And dignified. All right. All right. So, since medieval poetry was also huge with the whole concept of, and I've got some gaps I need to go ahead and fill in here also. But it's always important to go ahead and make sure that it flows to the voice. So, from Scottish lord and Norman bride came forth a son with bright blue eyes, with sword and book, with pen and shield. Learned men taught him to wield his mind in form and equal scope. To work it's hard. I still need something. I still need to fix this couplet here. To work. We'll do this. To work as hard as others hope. No, to work as hard as others hope. Okay. Sent off from his beloved home to see the world and study tomes, to learn from great and aged men before he travels home again, cherishing their only son, cherishing their son and heir, for newborn land wished him prepared. For newborn land. Let's see. For newborn land wished him prepared. For newborn land wished him prepared. Yeah. He learned in Holland from masters of sword to parry clean and press to ward. He learned the breadth of worldly finery from all the time he spent in Burgundy. The time he spent at courts in France taught him the social game advance. Spanish vineyards quenched his palate as he dined on feasts of beef and shallot. Words heard spoken from Verona's lips taught him the skill of showmanship. Returned he then to home and countryside. Returned he then. Then returned. Gentleman learned. A gentleman. I need another word. A gentleman rounded, learned, and dignified. Do I like rounded there? Because rounded's sort of a cheeky way of calling him fat. Which, considering he spent his time feasting and drinking in Spain, might be appropriate. A gentleman, but I don't know if I want to end the poem like that. A gentleman. Then returned to home and countryside. A gentleman a gentleman skilled, learned, and dignified. A gentleman's. And he returned. And he returned. You know what? That's the so the rhyme scheme's off there. So he From this to home and countryside, returned a gentleman learned and dignified. Returning a gentleman, there it is. Yep, returning a gentleman learned and dignified. Alright, from Scottish lord and Norman bride came forth a son with bright blue eyes, with sword and book, with pen and shield. Learned men taught him to wield his mind and form in equal scope, to work as hard as others hope. Sent off, yeah, it's period, because that's the thing. That's not what I wanted. Sent off from his beloved home to see the world and study tomes, to learn from great and aged men before he traveled home again. They tread, cherishing their son and heir for newborn land which him prepared. Learned and honed from masters of sword to parry clean and press toward, he learned the breadth of worldly finery from all the time he spent in Burgundy. The time he spent in courts in France taught him the social game advance. Spanish vineyards quenched his palate. As he dined on feasts of beef and shallot, words heard spoken from Verno's lips taught him the skill of showmanship. He brought all this to home and countryside, returning a gentleman learned and dignified. So there you have it. A little bit over an hour, which, if you include the time that I was talking, probably an hour nonetheless. But from finding your exemplar to analyzing it for the skills that you want to reproduction of a poem. So, so let me switch back over to Facebook, and I guess if there are any questions or comments, I'm happy to answer them. Although I don't see anything right now on Facebook, so I think my let's see. Let me try closing some of my stuff here. Oh, cool. There we go. Okay. Okay. Whew. All right. So yeah, now we're at 38 minutes total. So let's see. If there are any questions or anything, throw them up on the chat on the board. I'm not sure how many people are watching right now. So yeah. Nobody? Anybody? Bueller? Cool. All right. Well, obviously I'm going to save the video here so that we can watch it later. And the document is saved the way it is. I'll be posting the poem in a minute. Yeah, if there's any questions or whatever, I'm happy to chime in. So thanks for joining along with me for those of you that are here, and I hope that this was somewhat enjoyable watching me freak out and do poetry. All right, bye.